there and was going to get my PhD in quantum computing, but then I dropped out of my PhD and worked at NASA for a few years. I worked for the Planetary Sciences Division, so code 699, and I worked on Mars missions in particular. So worked on Curiosity, which is like a robot on Mars, Maven, which is a satellite that's orbiting Mars. I like calibrated the mass spectrometer for that. And then I also worked on spacecraft operations. So I operated Landsat 8. After 3 years at NASA, I left and worked in the defense industry for about another 3 years. I worked on spy planes and radios for spies. Got like a government secret clearance, a DoD secret clearance. It's inactive today. I don't use it today, but that was a wild ride, wild times. And then I moved up to the Bay Area and worked for a startup. I was in charge of security and infrastructure, DevOps, MLOps, and like engineering support for the software engineering team for 20 people, for 20 software engineers at a company called Belive. Belive was a same day, next day delivery startup, and we got acquired by Target. At Target, we built their same day, next day delivery program from 0 deliveries per day to 1 million deliveries per day in 2 years during COVID. That was another wild ride. Then I worked on Target.com for, I don't know, it must have been like a hot second. It was just a few months, but got into YC. So I left Target and went to YC as a founder of a company called Deus. That company was shuttered when I had a co-founder split, my previous co-founder. And me and my current co-founder started this AI company called ChatOpenSource. ChatOpenSource is an AI company that we essentially give these very helpful cross-references to transaction lawyers that are doing the M&A process. So we work with 4 of the largest, we're in procurement with 4 of the largest law firms in the world. And we're in paid pilot with 2 law firms now. And so we're rolling our product out to them. And yeah, I mean, that's
awesome.
Sort of the story.
Well, Chase, I really appreciate giving a quick background. And I think we have most of the people that I believe are going to be here. It's almost that 5-minute mark. We want to make this presentation as fun and interactive as possible. So everyone that just joined, if you guys can scan the QR code here on the bottom left, that is going to make this presentation the interactive component and then, yeah, if you guys want to give a thumbs up, once we see that thumbs up, I want to see maybe around at least 8 or 9 thumbs up. That means we have 8 participants,
And you can also do it. Yep. Yeah, so whether or not you want to do it on your mobile phone, if you also just type in up top, you can see, go to menti.com and type in that code. It'll give you the full, we've got some fun polls, questions, ways to kind of type questions directly into it. So it'll be a fun session. But yeah, once you type in that code, if you want to do it on your computer too, you'll have access to that. And we'll be kicking everything off.
Awesome.
Putting that code in right now. Am I doing it? I'm doing it too, right?
You don't have to do it, Chase, if you don't want to, but if you want, yeah.
You can follow along on the screen too, so that'll be fine.
Yeah, follow along.
Awesome. Looks like we have 10 people connected. I think that's enough. Also, this QR code that is shown on the bottom left will be in our next slide. So if you don't get it this first slide, no worries. You guys will have an opportunity to join in. All right. So Chase, I know you gave a fantastic introduction and background of yourself from NASA, Target, Apple to YC, but all of us want to know what exactly they work on now. What is ChatOpenSource? We know it's the open source alternative to ChatGPT, but we know you're an expert in AI, but what is ChatOpenSource?
Right. So, I mean, I think this starts to dive into, I have very strong opinions about like how an AI product should be made. I think it's best not to start with an idea, but actually to start with a customer and to start with a customer story, right? Like who is it that is asking for this? It should be the question in your head. Who's willing to pay for this? How much are they willing to pay for this, right? What are the customer's problems? You start with a customer experience and then you build technology around that. You build a why now around that customer experience. So we spent a lot of time in discovery, like a lot of time in discovery, where we had no product and we were basically just like building cute little demos and showing them to customers only after we tried to understand their problem, right? And we showed that we cared, and we gave a lot to them without any expectation of anything in return, just so we could be in proximity so that we can learn and understand their problems. So we started out essentially as a workflow automation tool about a year ago. We had these like, we made this demo that was hilarious. It was like these Zapier integrations, and you would ask the AI to do something. I think we were using GPT-4 at the time, and GPT-4 would go and it would like utilize these Zapier integrations by like outputting JSON, and would, you know, go and do tasks that you would ask it to do based on your integrations. Super broad, super useless for any particular customer, but it was kind of a starting point, right? And we started talking to customers and asking them what their problems were. We were able to niche down into the healthcare industry, but then we found the healthcare industry was too slow, so we were building automations around that. With that, we kind of leveraged that into talking to these large law firms, these mega law firms, and then the mega law firms were telling us these problems that they were having around the M&A process. And now we've kind of centered ChatOpenSource around speeding up the due diligence process for M&A, right? M&A is a very, very long, very lucrative process to focus on. And the customers that we were talking to were saying, hey, this M&A process, the lawyers we were talking to were saying this M&A process is taking too long. And if you help us speed that up, that is valuable. And we'll pay you, you know, $10,000 a month. Sometimes, in some cases, even more per month, to actually speed this up. So that's what ChatOpenSource does today. Is you can think of us as kind of like a document viewer. You upload your due diligence process, like your due diligence documents, and then we help you scan through those and view those documents. We started from the customer experience when we were building that product.
Very cool. I love what you guys are doing. And to make this presentation an interactive component, and this is mostly about AI, and how to apply it to your business. For everybody in the audience, what is the first word that comes to mind when you think of AI, when you think of artificial intelligence? And you can put that in on your phone if you already have. Awesome. So improvement, efficiency, speed, automation. Are some of these words, or do some of these words, Chase, do these kind of resonate with you? What are your thoughts on kind of what are the first words that you think of when you think of AI?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I think what a lot of people think of is like fear around AI, right? Or like automation as in, you know, automation meaning replacement. But when I think about AI, I think about it less about replacing humans and more about speeding up and augmenting humans, right? If you can supercharge humans and speed them up, I think we're finding that is far more valuable than saying, hey, we're going to replace your lawyers, we're going to replace your accountants, we're going to replace your whoever. So I don't know, I guess augmentations, yeah, I don't know, speeding up, yeah.
That is like an alien, or as like a peer, or as something that you can talk to and ask for advice, like.
Or a document viewer. I actually kind of believe that the whole chatbot thing is overplayed. Like, not every user interface has to be a chatbot, right? Like, we're actually kind of a document viewer, and we're kind of like a checklist looking type product eventually. So we kind of have this checklist of like M&A things that you should really pay attention to, and then we bring up documents based on the questions that are typically asked during the M&A due diligence process. There's a chat component, but I kind of view it as a document viewer more.
And Fred said that he was kind of debating between automation and augmentation. It's good to hear that word, augmentation. For that person that put in ease, what do you think of what do you think of that?
And I didn't put in ease specifically, but I think I put in something similar, the idea that when you think of AI, and I know we'll get to this later on today, but there's so many, like, I would consider myself decently savvy in terms of AI, right? And I know I'm still way beyond, honestly, probably what middle schoolers and high schoolers are learning today and how they're leveraging AI with their day-to-day tasks. But I think it's a lot of, again, I won't speak for anyone on this call, but I think for me is, okay, it's so much work to kind of learn, hey, if I could save even an hour on this task that I do every single day, right? Or that I do every single week. Yeah, that for the next, hopefully 30, 40, 50 years of my life, right? That's hundreds and thousands of hours saved. But what's it take to really get there to learn it? And how does that tool really continue to get further developed? And so I think ease, at least when I spoke to some of the words there, is how easy is it to actually pick up and develop, and how easy is it for that to kind of stay along the long-term path of that specific task. And so, Chase, I think as we kind of get towards the future slides, I'd love to hear your thoughts too on like how have you seen the adoption of AI by individual users like us? Is that kind of up to pace in terms of what you think that would be today?
So the question that you're asking, if I could restate it, is do you think that the adoption of AI today is do you think it's overplayed, or do you think that it will continue? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. Do you think that humans are adopting to AI as quickly as we should be, or is it slower? Right? Do you think more humans should be really leaning into AI more? Or yeah, like what are your thoughts on that?
This kind of reminds me of like the mobile app revolution, where like a lot of people were in the mobile app industry and 90% of those companies are dead today. However, you would be crazy if you thought that that was actually overplayed. Like, mobile apps power everything that we do in our lives today. This is kind of like that, but on the order of, I think, electricity, right? I think AI is actually much bigger than the mobile app revolution. I think it's actually much bigger than the internet revolution. I think it's something that will play out over the next 30 years, 20 years, as we'll look back and say this was probably one of the most impactful things that has ever happened to us. I mean, similar to how we don't farm today, right? And no one's like upset that we don't farm today. Like, I'm really happy that I don't go out into a field and pick berries all day, right? That was because of the Industrial Revolution and electricity and tractors and all of these innovations that kind of came after that, right? I think AI is like that, right? It'll be a different world.
Mm-hmm. And so for that person who put hype to, what was your reasoning? I'm just joking.
It's okay if you think it's arrived.
Right. Another thing, just to kind of show the scale and how massive people have been adopting AI, moreover than the internet, moreover than even getting an account on Facebook. How many users adopted ChatGPT just in the first month alone? So some of you think 100,000, some think 100 million, others think 25 million.
You got an even spread? What do we think?
Yeah, very even spread. And for those of you that don't know, is the fastest adopting technology, or even people using a business just in general. It was the fastest adoption of all time.
All right, let's see it.
All right, so all right, enter, show the correct answer. There we go. So for those of you that picked 57 million, you were right on the spot. I do think that, everyone picked 100 million because, yes, I mean, that is a lot of people, but 57 million people is no small feat in just 1 month of adoption, especially with some tool that is really new to a lot of people. I mean, the AI tools that I grew up with, I mean, Siri, I think, came out when I was like in high school. I thought that was really cool, but this is far more advanced, where you can actually take a whole piece of code, upload it, and have AI, analyze that code. But another person that just joined this meeting, I don't know if Mark, if you want to take any talk on AI as well, just what are your guys' thoughts on this hyper adoption using AI?
I mean, we think that it's all about data and who can have the best sort of sets of data to train the best models on. Like, we personally don't think that the large language models that are like OpenAI are is good enough for the average user to sort of learn and produce, but then the small language models, like the ones that Google came out with, are way easier to manipulate. They run locally, and we are very bullish on the fact that the future is going to be in SLMs. So,
no, absolutely. And just to go over leveraging AI, Chase, I'd love your thoughts on. Whoops. How can, and also Mark too. I think we see a lot of people, myself included, that have no idea what the potential capabilities are with AI, how to use it effectively, and how to leverage it and maximize it. And so, Chase, if you can explain your thoughts on the best way to understand AI, how to utilize it, how to leverage it, and maximize it, in your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think customers don't respond so far to replacement, replacing employees, replacing people, as much as they do to augmentation, speeding up, increasing revenue. You're doing 2 M&A transactions per month. What if you could do 4? I mean, these are real examples. I think that if you can leverage AI in a way such that it supercharges some team instead of replacing a part of the team, I think that is that shows a very deep understanding of where the technology is at and where the technology is not, and meeting users where they are, meeting buyers where they are, right? They're not used to replacing a part of their team, and they don't necessarily want to. So, I mean, it's always funny when you have a founder talking to a mega law firm and they're like, "Oh yeah, we're going to replace this and that," and we don't do that. We tell them, "Look, keep doing the processes that you're doing today. We actually speed up those processes. We increase the efficiency of those processes. We allow you to make more revenue, fewer mistakes, less hallucinations, more double checking of your work, right? I think that's how you can leverage AI most effectively." Mark, do you have any insights?
I think in terms of understanding it, the big thing is it's that it knows too much, and you need to really tell it what exactly you want it to do. In terms of utilizing it, I fully agree with the ability to enhance teams. I think the back-end office tasks that people spend countless of hours, if not days, working on. I mean, we're currently working on a bunch of projects where we're taking something that takes 3 to 4 days to do to 15, 20 minutes, which, and I've never seen anything like it. And maximizing, I think, again, information and data. If you know how to thread, for example, just OpenAI API and use GPT 3.5 to go visit websites, you can essentially, as we found out, scrape about 480 million characters of text within a span of 6 to 7 hours, which for context is like libraries of books, and you can do it live to websites. So it's total insanity right now.
And so for those that don't know where to start, what's the easiest way to start understanding it?
I took about 200 to 300 hours of courses on Udemy. I can send recommendations on those courses because they're general overview. They take between 5 to 10 hours, the good ones. The really good ones are the ones that are very short in terms of video length and actually go over multiple tools. So there's one that has about 12 to 15 sections. I forget the name of it, but it's 120, essentially like 2-3 minute videos, and they go through absolutely everything somebody needs to understand about different tools and capabilities. I can send the link in chat later on.
Fantastic. Perfect. And we'll also have a section where we'll have a Q&A here at the end too. So if you guys can save all your questions for the end, that'd be fantastic. Now, this is kind of segueing into the specific tools because there are so many different AI tools. And Chase, what do you think the best AI tools are, just in general?
I feel like you're asking me to pick my favorite.
Right.
There's
And Mark too, just if You guys both have insights.
And maybe even a little bit of context here. So I know there's a lot of founders on this call, right? There's a lot of, whether it's solopreneurs or with teams, building a whole bunch of different things from SaaS platforms to their own platforms and sites or mobile apps. So let's take a look even from the founder perspective at first, right? And then maybe we can open it up into more broad, just cool use cases as we see what's going on with Sora, right? And other things like that.
Yeah. What's useful for a founder in AI? I mean, I think you can use AI for code generation very, very well. I think the Gemini model that dropped recently, everyone talks about Sora, and of course, as they should, like Sora being able to simulate these worlds and using these simulations in future AI systems for like automated evals is like a research topic that I think is going to bear a lot of fruit. But I think for now, using something like Gemini 1.5 Pro with the million token context window on your code base, wow, what a game changer. Like the retrieval accuracy of that and the long context window of that, being able to input an error message in an entire code base and maybe even the context of like your environment variables on your system, stuff like that, right? That's amazing. Like that makes coding so much easier, so much faster. If you could get early access to Gemini 1.5 Pro for coding, I would recommend doing that. I think broadly, what are the best AI tools is a different question. I always believe in focusing on the tools that will bear fruit in the next 5 to 10 years, right? And having a plan to make revenue today, but then focusing on systems that generalize with compute, right? I think that if you look at like reinforcement learning, it's a system that generalizes with more compute, which means if you spend more money on it, it gets better. And as we have more compute available in the near future, reinforcement learning improves in a way that doesn't end, right? I think things like alpha geometry and QStar are incredible systems that generalize with more compute that are not just applicable to math, but they also will be applicable to software in the future. And then I think they'll be applicable to robotics and manufacturing and all kinds of industries after that. I think the 5-year plan is, imagine a simulation of a manufacturing process and an AI that, comes up with an idea, tests it in the simulation, the manufacturing simulation, and then takes that feedback from the simulation and comes up with a new idea and does this in a way, in a loop that doesn't end, right? No data involved, right? It's all synthetic data that's generated. I think that's kind of the future of all AI tools.
Fantastic. And then, Mark, I don't know if you have any other feedback, because I know you're using a lot of really cool AI tools, different applications.
So if we take it away from coding, from the sales side, there is so many awesome tools to just help founders on everyday life. So for example, I think there's 5 that would highlight. One is Notion for document storage, CRMs, updating, and also just it now has AI capability with workflows, self-updating things, and you can connect it to practically anything from Zapier to make.com. So that's a must. The second one is for if you like to dabble in mass creation of voice or like voice notes, podcasts. 11 Labs is phenomenal at voice replication. So I have a bunch of my replicas that currently tweaking them and working with them on ads to make sure that I didn't spend time in it, and AI can just generate script, voice it over, and have it upload on YouTube within 2 hours. Other tools which are fun. The biggest one that's opened my personal eyes in it is something called clay.com. It's essentially linked 30 databases plus together, and you can do outbound from Clay. It's the most powerful sales tool I've ever seen in my life, because I can pull people's phone numbers, private emails, personal emails, locations, what their business does, pitch book, like everything you can think of, you can pull it.
Wait, what's that website again, Mark?
Clay.
Clay.
Clay.com, yeah.
And then we'll also have a page as well on our Gilder resources for those that are here we have a bunch of AI tools as well. Obviously, it's constantly adding because there's just so many new ones being added to the market, being tested. So if you ever want kind of a one-stop shop things for that, right? How do I leverage AI for sales, marketing, content creation, so on and so forth? That's also a library that we built that Mark's also helped us show through Notion, because again, a lot of times when we use Notion, it's vastly different even 6 months ago than what we're seeing here today. So that's a big piece. And then Mark will have his own AI recommendations as well.
Sure. Very happy to Olga to share them later on, and happy to answer any questions about them. The last two tools might be a bit generic, but Instantly AI for sending out emails, just because it tracks people's bounce rates, and also if your email even gets sent, which really helps when you're emailing a lot of people every day. Last one, Superhuman, people like a lot. Any of the Figma plugins that sort of let you do more is always an absolute joy to see, because it makes coding so much easier. Chase, I'm not sure if you're familiar, since you talked about coding. You know builder.io? They're the ones that are doing the Figma to code in about 10 different CS languages, which they had a big announcement yesterday about their next sort of steps.
Oh, hell yeah. So I have heard of builder.io, but I haven't checked on them in several months. So it's good to see that they're making good progress. Yeah, actually, another tool that I recommend is grok.com. I've sent it in the chat. GROQ. Grok is fucking cool, man. Like,
yeah,
Founder, like having 500, what is it, almost 500 tokens per second response rate. Like, it's basically really fast AI, right? That's so useful for a lot of real-time applications, right? That I think there's an entire market of to be built on top of that infrastructure. Like a whole entire verticals and segments to be built on top of real-time applications of AI from something like grok.com. So
fantastic. And also this, we are recording it. We will share this entire presentation with everyone here. And then on top of that, we'll put all these different tools that Mark and Chase have mentioned in the description as well once the video is out. Another really cool tool that I also want to let everybody know is Scenery. This is actually the video tool that I use, and pretty much you can upload any type of content and prompt it to give you take a 60-minute video and summarize it in 2 minutes and have all the key parts. I'll also put a link into that as well. But I think we've already answered this question, where to start when it comes with AI. There's so many different cool tools. There's so many different things. But if we want to talk about it, where do you think, as a founder, like you have 50 different hats, you have so many different things you need to prioritize. Do you think Grok is the best place to start when it comes to AI? ChatGPT, ChatOpenSource. What do you guys think? Desync AI. What do you think the best place to start when it comes to AI?
And I think taking it one step further too, when we think of when it starts AI, and then everyone here who is, whether you have your own company, whether you're working, at a different enterprise organization, and you think, how do I use AI in my everyday life? Maybe it's just using GPT, 3.5 to just come up with a fun blog or something, or help add content to what you do. That's obviously, I think I would argue, a majority of Americans aren't even doing that, on a daily basis. So the question here is where to start when it comes to AI. There's hundreds of amazing tools out there, and really, how many is too many, or what are is it like 3 or 5 that founders should use on a daily basis that are must-haves for efficiency, or really what's the recommendation there from that jumping off point?
Yeah, I mean, I think for non-founders, I think ChatGPT is just fine, honestly. Like, just go use ChatGPT, and it's super helpful for a lot of everyday tasks, or learning new things, or question answers. I think for founders, I end up using this website a lot. It's called promptingguide.ai. It was so OpenAI recruits a lot of people from this team, and it's because it's a very high quality team, and it's a very high quality set of guides on how to use different AI systems. They even have something they released yesterday that was a prompting guide on how to use Gemini Pro 1.5 in the long context windows, right? Even though that tool came out a week ago, right? Like, They are really, really good, and every time I use them, I'm surprised by that resource, at how good it is. So shout out to them, promptingguide.ai. They're fantastic. They're in the chat. If you're a founder, go there first.
Yeah, and I guess to confuse everybody a lot, there's also learnprompting.org, which is where I go, which is like the same thing, but in just another format from what I can see.
Ooh, yeah, that is a good one. That is a good one. Thank you.
Because I think also when we think of this too, right before we go to the next slide, and we'll make sure we've got about 10 minutes left, so we'll make sure to save some time for Q&A. But when it comes to AI, I think a lot of the biggest things are, again, it's like, what are the first things to dive into? And Chase, like you said, ChatGPT, just from a user standpoint, it's, again, how do we find the right prompts, and what are we feeding these insane models, as Mark said, that just know everything, and it's figuring out how do we extract these individual pieces from it at that first level. And so I know we'll have some more questions at the end that I've even got saved up too, but yeah, we'll let the rest of the presentation play out.
Awesome. Well, yeah, just this is for everybody. What are your biggest barriers to learning and leveraging AI? What do you think the most difficult concepts are to grasp when it comes to AI? And you can put your responses here in the chat. Excuse me, on your phone presentation. But yeah, I think for me personally, it's just understanding what the perfect prompt is. I think, there's a lot of different cool tools with AI, but I think prompting the, ChatGPT in order for it to do something cool. But okay, so Alan said getting the whole picture and then the implementation.
I think as well, prompting can go so many different levels so the way I prompt, I think I've shown this to Tyga and Brian and Michael, but I prompt with strings of emojis, math symbols, and characters, because for me, normal human language doesn't do it anymore for the model. And being able to sort of condense your, I guess, certain words or key phrases into that really helped me a lot to understand how the model actually works. So for example, the word innovator, 9 characters translates to a certain amount of tokens, but a brain followed by a light bulb translates to way less tokens than that. So you're trying to squeeze a lot of different themes and ideas into just strings of emojis, which is where I'm at with that.
Yeah, and one of the questions too that I think a lot of us have too is I think it's a deeper understanding of when I, for example, and I'm not a creative writer, I'm not a professional writer by any means, but I know if I have to write content or a blog or a piece on something, right, it's coming from here, it's coming from my experience, what I've seen from talking to other founders, doing myself, versus when you pull from GPT-4 or any other kind of source like that, it's okay, here's an amalgamation of different sources that we found on the internet, right, that they pulled together. And so I think a lot of hesitancy, at least for me, and maybe what others on this call are facing is the quality of AI from certain things, right? Whether it's videos, whether it's writing, whether it's content, better or just as good as what other humans can currently produce. It's maybe definitely faster, right? But just because it's faster, does that mean it's the same quality? And so that's where I don't fully understand that concept of it, certainly for coding and other things where it's more black and white. But I would also be interested in hearing like, hey, like, how is the quality of AI with certain prompts compared to the human element and what we all here on this call can do ourselves?
Yeah, I think that human in the loop is super important today. I think this question of like, is it better or worse than AI is almost, it's funny, like the goalpost changes, doesn't it? Right? Word processors used to be called, like artificial intelligence, decades and decades ago. Like you have this incredibly powerful model, like, just even just looking at GPT-4, not even looking at, the latest Gemini models and stuff. And it understands, it understands medical concepts as much as like a med school student, right? Am I a med school student? No. It can outcompete me there, but then I can also trick it up and make it, slip up very easily at the same time, right? But you can do the same thing with humans, right? Like I can make a human slip up very easily. I can make a real med school student slip up very easily. So yeah, I mean, I think better in what way is kind of how I think about it, right? And each application is different.
I think for me, it's just taking any of my things I'm not good at and getting into the acceptable, intermediate to advanced level, which is what it's really good at. So I'm in college right now. If I don't know something, I'm not going to start Googling that anymore. I'm going to go into Perplexity, which is a search engine tool, or into OpenAI and actually get it to generate me a syllabus or generate me a sort of way of learning that thing that I understand, from the core concept to the most advanced. And leveraging it like that has been really helpful for me. On the flip side of it, I can trick it into doing things or do it better than it will, but those things are becoming fewer. I've been playing with GPT since GPT-3, and the difference between GPT-3, GPT-4, Gemini, it's vertical if you think in terms of growth and quality. And every single new model that comes out, I'm challenged to think like, hey, can it actually do this without me? Or can it do it so much better than it's no longer comparable? Which, I'm not a coder. It can generate a code that's 1 billion times better than I will ever write.
That's fantastic. Well, just in general, key takeaways. One thing I want to mention is actually in one of our last presentations, our last AI presentation, is essentially the internet is brought the cost of distribution to zero. AI is bringing the cost of creation to zero. And Chase, I'd just like your thoughts on that. Like, how is that going to change, the workforce in the next 10, 20 years? How is that going to change just how people live in general in the next, 10 to 30 years?
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
What do you think I know that you mentioned there's 2 different scenarios too about AI. I'd love for you to kind of talk about that and what the key takeaways are.
I mean, okay, yeah, you're asking me like 5 questions at the same time. That's fine. So I think in the next 10 to 30 years, I think we are 5 years away from AGI. If you define AGI as there are significant scientific progresses being made by AI agents in the world on a, basically multiple on a daily basis. I think that is around 5 years away. I know that probably sounds crazy, but let's see what happens in 5 years. I think we're 10 years away from having maybe 100 million very high quality robots on Earth that are these, AI embodied robots that essentially go and do tasks that are capable of doing tasks that humans can do. I think we're 20 years away from maybe 1 billion robots that are doing tasks that humans can do, but better, much better than humans can possibly do them. I think we're about 30 years away from 10 to 100 billion robots on Earth going and doing tasks that you and I, used to do. And I think that changes our society in a dramatic way. I think 30 years from now, we essentially live in this world where we're taken care of by these AI robots. I think people underestimate the power of robotics. They see Atlas where it is today. They see the Tesla bot where it is today, and they only extrapolate linearly, right? But these are not things that extrapolate linearly. As we get exponentially more compute and exponentially more algorithmic efficiency, both of those are very important, Wright's law and algorithmic efficiency. Those are both exponentials, and you stack them on top of each other, it's, an even bigger exponential. It's an exponential plus an exponential. And I think that leads to a very different world. I think it's a better world. I don't think it's a bad world. I don't think there are going to be killer robots trying to murder us like in Terminator. I think that's just kind of silly. I think that the robots will keep our species safe, help us thrive.
And
30 years.
Fred has a really good question. What will the value of money be when we have robots that can do everything for us? And can they also create more robots to do the same? And what will humans do?
You know, like there was this Tesla earnings call where Elon said something that I think is not quite as appreciated as it should have been. He says like the amount of money and like the size of the economy is not necessarily bounded by the number of humans, right? The market cap of every company in the world is 100 trillion today, maybe a little bit more than 100 trillion. I think in 30 years it could be 1,000 trillion or 3,000 trillion, and I think that becomes the case with robotics. I think you can have robots buying from robots within easily within 10 years, but I think that the vast majority of economic output from Earth will be AI and robotics in the next 20 years, right? And I think the value of money, I don't know, it's like asking about the value of money is like asking about the value of grain 200 years ago. Like, yeah, grain's really important, and 200 years ago it was like, you live or die by how much grain you have, right? How much grain your city has. But, we created this thing called money, and we were able to have an economy that's not necessarily based on farming. And I think there will be a next stage of our economy, and I think that does play out over the next 30 years.
Awesome. And then we've got 2 minutes here, so hopefully time for one last question too, but I guess that's kind of the follow-up, right? Like, there was a comedian that I saw, and for those of you that know Theo Von, or they had a guest on saying where do we bring in where robots, right, are doing the creative stuff, the things that humans love to do, right? Draw art, right? Be creative. And we still see humans in the factories, right? In the warehouses. Do we see a shift where they will be taking, like, as you said, in the next 10 years with these potentially, hundreds of millions of robots? Is it doing mostly physical tasks that replace what humans are doing? Is it a combination of both, or what does that even look like? Kind of as the final thought here.
Yeah. It's funny, like everyone's afraid of AI replacing humans. But I think what I'm seeing is like it actually supercharges humans. And yeah, there's displacement in that. And there are people that lose their jobs, but there are a lot more people who gain jobs from this. And I think that, I'm not trying to be pedantic. I'm not trying to be flippant. I think that billions of people will lose their jobs. But I think that the new world is, you can have, it used to be 10,000 people in the Writers Guild that controlled writing in Hollywood. Imagine if there were 10 million writers that could make the next Marvel movie for $10 each, right? Some kid in Bangalore might make the next, blockbuster 10 years from now. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I think that people will be compensated for that. And there will be a lot of losers, but I think there will be many more winners, if that makes sense.
100%. So we appreciate everyone's time. We're at time here. Tyga, I'll let you kind of close it out.
Yeah. Oh, everybody, we will give an email recap too here in the next, we're just going to process the video. We'll upload it too, so you guys have the recording of it. But we're looking forward to seeing you guys more at our next executive workshop. It is Unveiling the Unicorn with Fritz Lamon. That's March 12th around this time. So we hope to see everyone there, and we have more workshops every single month. We have a networking event as well. Chase, we really appreciate your time. And if everybody wants Chase's contact, also Mark's too, they both are AI experts with different really cool AI startups. Other than that, we hope to see everybody soon, and we really appreciate your time.
And don't forget about our speed dating once a month. Sign up for it.
That's right. Speed dating, speed networking. All right. Well, cheers, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.